above the hour, top of the hour. All right. So Dan Krasinski is going to be our guest speaker, as we all know. Right. So we interview Dan in a couple of the early episodes of our podcast, and we believe that the information that he have to pass is very important to a lot of folks because look, a lot of folks believe that we have to invest today with our now money. I need to have money in my checking account, so on and so forth, to be able to invest. But what we're going to talk about is some of those opportunities that are available to us to utilize our later money, to take advantage of it, and we can grow it in a way that we see fit. So it'll be good information today. So a little bit of administrative notes just for H Square Capital, which is Dr. Jones and I, Heath Jones and I. We are apartment syndicators in the Southeast. We're focused on B and C class properties, and we're aspiring to acquire in multifamily properties 50 units and above. So in 2020, we decided, look, it's not all about the money. Just like Coach Mike was talking about giving back to the community, we realized that it's important for us to invest with a purpose. So right now we're committed to donating 10% of all of our acquisition fee to a nonprofit organization that benefits the veteran as we scale our portfolio. So provide education and investment opportunities to our veterans as well, along with giving back to those nonprofit organization that gives to the veterans. So without further ado, Dan Krasinski to talk about how to rocket your dollars.
Awesome, Hutch. Thanks so much. Great to be here, Heath, and so great to see so many friendly faces in Pennsylvania, New York. Ann and I had a nice discussion this morning, and I did see a Hook'em Horn shirt before, so it makes me feel nice and good, home sweet home. This is a real background here at Capital Factory. So anybody that's been here before in Austin, this is the big glass hotel in it all. So equally weighting, the state of Texas and in the U.S. here. I'm going to take a few minutes to go through a few slides. I know there's a big mix of folks that have a really strong expertise as both SDIRA investors and raising money, but also some novices too. So I promise to make it exciting and educational for everybody involved. Please, any questions, just as pun intended, rocket them through. Please interrupt me. I will not feel bad in any way, shape, or form. All right, can everybody see my screen okay? Cool. All right, so let's kick it off. Before beginning here, do you want to talk on Texas? I'll give you some boots on the ground. First thoughts and prayers for folks that have been severely affected. We joke a little bit. I'm from the Northeast, that only a few inches of snow, but from a relative basis, it was a true shock to the system. This is the first time people were forced to drive in it. The potential absence of supplies, and then for folks of us that are parents, a lot of us on the call with your kids. This shook them. With my nonprofit, there's a fair amount that have still said, I'm truly in shock. Once again, it's relative to what some of us experience, but it's good to recognize. I would say it's pretty fair to assume almost everybody, in case you lived in a hospital zone, went without power or water. So I share that for two aspects. One is you're reaching out to folks, of course, be sensitive. But secondly, based on the personality, some people might be raring and ready to go, to make an investment or talk shop. Some may not be otherwise. So, thank you also for all of you that reached out over the past week. So, with that, I like to channel my inner Rod Khleif here. Trust me, I didn't do all the top 100 things that he asked for, but I feel there was 3 really good ones that I wanted to share personally that are really easy to do. Don't have to be a Marine, more like on the caveman side. And the first is just flip your feet, do the letter L in bed, do some morning meditation, get the blood to your head before your walk, your run, your coffee. The next one I actually learned from binging on Netflix, the Gratefulness Circle. You do it at dinner before bed. It's really fun also with kids. And then the final one, and I have to give credit where it's due to, I guess we'd say Ms. Kim Kardashian now, is to write a letter on New Year's Eve to your child. I know Rod suggested every week doing it, but at least once a year. It's really insightful, particularly when I did it in the 2020 COVID year. So with all that, if you're with me for just one more minute, and I really do hope you stay the hour, I know everybody here is for networking anyways, but the top takeaway that I really, really want you to know is that this is all about you folks. Thank you for your time here. You can use your retirement dollars to invest in real estate. So once again, all about you and your retirement dollars and what you invest in. Stated a little bit differently, for folks that raise money on the call, your investors can use their retirement dollars to invest in real estate. Now, I apologize, I don't have fancy slides. It didn't feel right to have my content person make a lot of pretty things. But what I would say is that folks that have raised money have seen between 10 to 20% of their raise come from retirement dollars. All they have to do is educate their audience with something. Here's the eye test. Let them know that you can use your retirement dollars to invest in my next deal. Once again, really powerful. And from a perspective of how much is out there, it's literally in the trillions. Only about 100, 150 billion with a B, a little b, of the 10 trillion with the big T is actually in self-directed accounts towards real estate right now. So this is more of an awareness campaign. I think collectively this is something we all share. Hutch, I love your post on LinkedIn about this. But there's a lot of room to move. So once people are made aware, just from a reference point, we tend to see about $100,000 being the first tranche that goes into a deal. So, with that, here's me. They call me Dan K. I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And, being that we live in a hashtag world, I like to share a few things that, kidding aside, I think are pretty relevant here. Yield. I think yield is so important. Particularly for most folks that are self-employed, either by choice, by retirement, a side gig or not, the solo 401k, I want to share a little bit more. I consider it the more attractive of the, say, two options versus an SDIRA. And then a concept of return of capital, which, doesn't really mean much in the SDIRA land, but it is something kind of cool. In between, I've had the benefit to probably talk to 500 sponsors over the past 3 years, invested with over a dozen, and crossing multiple asset classes, both within and outside of real estate. So with that, here's where my head's at today. After our record-setting cold and snow in Texas, it made it crystal clear to me last week, being bundled up inside for the first time in a decade here in Austin, that the days of, call it 60-40, set it and forget it, what our parents went through, these are long gone. Stocks are crazy volatile, whether it's the Reddit wave or otherwise. Bonds are basically at zero. Think about what you get in your checking account. I think mine was 0.001, not even a full basis point. And the biggest thing is that you have no influence. And this is what I'm leading to, is why the self-directed account, why an SDIRA is so important, because you can have a lot of influence on with who. Yes, sir.
You're having a lot of background noise. Kind of hard to hear you. It's a lot.
Okay. Sorry, I got the buds in here. Is this a little bit better?
Still loud.
Still loud?
Yes.
Okay. How about now? Are we good? Hutch, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you okay. There's a lot of background noise that are closing doors, closing doors. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's all right.
My apologies.
No worries. So, shifting here is the big takeaway I'd say is, for you as an individual, you have the right to your money to invest in what you want, when you want. And why this is so attractive is you can invest in hard assets such as real estate, as we all know. And the big thing, a lot of us have been fortunate to be at a family office show or meet a high net worth individual, is that these folks have been very clear. They make their money from tax advantage investments or via tax advantage accounts, investing primarily in real estate. So, with that, once again, I know there's folks with great expertise that have an SDIRA that have raised millions through these accounts, and folks coming here for the first time. I just want to share, I'm not going to go through every slide in detail, but there's a lot what you can do. Real estate has been the bread and butter here for the last 50 years. Of course, startups, crypto, private assets. Here in Texas, we have mineral rights, and even internationally, you can invest. So it's a very, very sort of powerful sort of account. That said, here's my disclaimer. There is some prohibited transactions. No life insurance, no collectibles like Air Jordans or, baseball cards, the new LeBron card that's trading at, 1.6 million or so. And the big thing is no self-dealing. So not yourself or your linear family. So what does this mean? If you have a startup, you have an idea, you, meaning your IRA, cannot invest in this company. Or say you're going to buy your, I was talking to some folks from New York City today, your son or daughter's going to go to NYU, you cannot buy a condo along Union Square or Washington Square and have them stay in it, or for you to come down on the weekend, because once again, you're part of the linear family. Oddly enough, fun fact, brothers and sisters are not considered part of the linear family, but you have to be careful that you're not giving them, say, a sweetheart deal versus other folks. So with that, this is my sizzle, in terms of what can be done and how powerful a self-directed account is here. Now, I'm going to start on the bottom here. And I'm not, first of all, disclaimer, I'm not an investment advisor. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not sharing advice here. But generally speaking, as I say, you can spin the wheel in any direction. This would be a pretty strong portfolio, I would suggest, from 2020 into the future right here. So, a few things kind of working our way counterclockwise. You have your stocks, you have your bonds. Crypto is attractive. I think it's pretty fair to have a chip in crypto. But then you start to really see the benefits of this self-directed world, one of which is private loans. Just like you could, and you'll hear me refer to this a few times, just as you could with your piggy bank checking account, you can do with your retirement dollars. Once again, super powerful. And of those that have had a 401k, an employer-sponsored 401k, or say a rollover IRA, you know that you're very limited on what you can invest in and the type of diversification that you can have here. So I would say, think about, what do you support? I know a lot of us have great causes. Are you going to support a female entrepreneur? Are you going to support military-led folks? It's very powerful. Once again, you can do all this with your self-directed IRA. And then on the real estate side, it's not, for those that maybe felt you're limited previously to a REIT, trading a publicly traded REIT, this really opens the world up to you to thousands of sponsors, thousands of deals that, right off the top here, some pay a strict pref, meaning think of a dividend, a distribution. Other folks, much like when you invest in a startup or something private, you're only going to get the back end. So you're basically putting a lot more faith, I would say, into the asset management team. And also, once again, the beauty of these self-directed IRA accounts, you cannot touch it without early withdrawal penalty to 59.5. So for a good majority of folks on the call, naturally, you have almost a disincentive to pull this money out early. So another reason why I think private real estate and self-directed IRAs are such a beautiful match. And then, finally, kind of marrying up our top two lines here, realize it's not just strictly getting, say, dividend income or getting equity on the back end. As you know, many of you on the call here are multifamily investors. You can also use your retirement dollars for something that pays a pref and also pays a back end promote. I just showed an example of an industrial property here, but very common also in the multifamily world. So with that, let's talk self-directed accounts. What I really want to show here, another takeaway, particularly for folks that are going to be active investors, or if you do raise money, is the concept of checkbook control. So I imagine a lot of folks who are on the call are familiar with the self-directed IRA, traditional, and the Roth. And I'll share a little detail for those that don't know the difference between the two. But also the solo 401k, which once again, I think is extremely powerful, particularly as many of us have moved into some aspect of being self-employed or having additional revenue streams come into our life for doing something active. So before going into detail, Heath Hutch, is the sound okay? And any questions?
Sounds good. Yeah, there's just this weird in the background. It sounds like there's some industrial work going on.
Normally it's the cranes outside, but as I said, there has been cleanup across the city. So thank you for my friends on the call for being a bit flexible here.
No worries. Yeah. And then if anybody has any questions, put it in the chat. So I have a question. If you were to buy, say you were to move your money into an SDA IRA and you were then to have checkbook control, you bought a property and you collect rental income from that property, the rental income would have to go back into the SDA IRA account. And then you would also have to pay the expenses from that account. And so are you able to realize any of those gains while you're managing the property, or do you have to wait until you get to retirement age to then use that money?
Yeah, dynamite question. The short answer is no. You do not get to physically touch, feel, hold your gains and invest and to do something with that. Now, that said, the money does come back into so let's say in your example, the traditional SDI IRA, you have 100,000, you make an investment. A quarterly dividend comes through. So an 8% pref, a $2,000 dividend comes back. This has to go back into the same account. Now, in case you're 59 and a half, you cannot pull it out early without early withdrawal penalty. But what you could do, let's say you're going to turn around and immediately invest this in a crowdfunding, or you have other sources of money, and then you're going to make another LP investment somewhere. So you do take advantage of it. It's not something you can pull out once again without penalty till you reach a certain age.
Right. And then so with that example, say that you check your statement and you're like, oh, holy cow, I got exactly 100K in my retirement account. I want to put this to work. You move it over to the SD IRA, and then you have checkbook control and you put the full 100K into a syndication. Are there any concerns that you need to have that the account might go into the negative from any sort of taxes that get assessed throughout the year, or would you want to keep some of it in the account without completely draining it to syndication?
Yeah, great question. So, as a passive LP investor, for I'd say 99.99% of the deals, what you invest is your largest potential loss. So in our example here, and let's walk through the full how you get with this. You worked at a corporate job, you had a 401k. You went from company A to company B. Your company A said, we're not going to manage your 401k. So it moves to, say, a Fidelity, an IRA. It's probably termed a rollover IRA. For you to invest in a private deal, private syndication, you need to move from your rollover IRA to a self-directed IRA. Now from here, your 100,000, you invest in a deal. Worst case, if this goes belly up, which I know is very, very uncommon in real estate, but let's say you put that 100K in a startup, for example, it went away, then, that's it. Unfortunately, you're not getting any of the, you're not claiming the loss as you would if you used, once again, your liquid accounts. That said, once again, you invest in a deal, it goes well, it goes 2x in 5 years, and then you do it again and again. And let's fast forward 20 years, you're sitting on, let's say $1.6 million when you turn 60 years old. Once again, with a traditional account, yes, you can pull out as much or as little of that as you could without penalty. Now, the nice thing is you're not going to pay capital gains tax, because once again, this was in, for those 20 years, in our example, this was in a self-directed IRA. At this point with the traditional, and I'll share more on the detail in a moment, you're just pulling this out just as you would with your Fidelity IRA or your company's 401k when you hit a certain age. You'll be paying normal tax as claiming it as income, but it won't be different than say a non-self-directed IRA.
Wrong button. Sounds good. Let's see. We have a question here. What is the earliest age for withdrawal without penalty?
Yeah, so the earliest age is 59 and a half years old without penalty in a self-directed IRA. And I would also say similar for folks that are in a corporate plan, say working at your W-2 job, it generally is 59 and a half. Once in a blue moon, there's some plans that say 55. Those are few and far between. And, there also could be certain things, say a la pandemic or different hardship, but, 59 and a half is the way that I would, the age that I would always be aware of.
All right. If you use the SDIRA Roth for a flip, can you split the proceeds from the transaction to have the used SDIRA amount go back into the IRA and the profit toward other types of bills, credit cards, loans?
Generally speaking, well, for your personal credit cards, your personal loans, no. So going back to, my disclaimer, what you cannot do, the biggest thing you cannot do is no self-dealing. So once again, you as an individual are probably the most disqualified person to your self-directed IRA. So as that money, the biggest no-no is, yes, it would be to, pay yourself personally, to pay your spouse, or to money come out. It's basically to commingle accounts. So no. Now, that said, for bills that, let's say you use your Roth IRA to buy a property, you have a checkbook. So typical things when you own a property, you're very hands off. You have people come, they stay with you, they pay rent. You have to do some sort of tenant improvement on the house. For this unique account, you can use this in terms of, purchasing the improvements. If you needed a loan, it would be a non-recourse loan, which means if stuff hits the fan, the bank, the financial institution can only go after this specific property, not your personal assets, not your personal residence.
Right. One thing that I heard that stuck with me is that on either side, so like you said, you're the most disqualified person from, any money that's made by the property that you have bought with your SDIRA money, you can't benefit from that directly at that moment. But I've also heard that, say you bought a property and you needed to put some changes into it, you technically aren't supposed to pay for those changes out of your pocket, correct? Like you can't contribute to expenses out of your cash, your now money pocket?
Yes, correct. So once again, you as an individual, your personal account, you should not touch that in any way, shape, or form. The IRA is its own entity. And just a general rule of thumb, I know there's probably a lot of folks that have been in residential at one time or another in their career. Let's just use some round numbers here. General rule of thumb is if you have 110% of the value. So for easy numbers, let's say a small rental house is 100,000. If you have 110K or above, you can buy it outright. Because to your point, Heath, there might be some small expenses that you'll need over time and you want to have that slush fund. Let's take a very similar example and say the property is 250,000. In this scenario, maybe you put down 100,000 of your 110, you take out 150,000 non-recourse loan. And then from there on, you still have a little slush fund that can pay for, smaller improvements.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. All right. So can my self-directed IRA money be added with my son's money and additional money of mine to buy a multifamily as a limited partner, trying to avoid taxes by this structure?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if I heard the question correctly, as limited partners, your IRA, pretty much all of us on the call, whether we're related or not, if we are LPs in some big mega fund, we can all be passive LP investors. That's completely fine. Now, let's say if, once again, can two folks that are related go together and say be a GP or purchase a house together? In some scenarios, yes. What I would suggest is a few things. One is that, let's say father and son in this example, you each have one unique SDIRA. From there, so father SDIRA, son SDIRA forms what we call a multi-member LLC. And then this multi-member LLC purchases the property. And it's always best if the father-son probably had 50% in. Or if there's, say, 3 people from the family that you have equal amounts going in. But you want to have that multi-member LLC purchasing the property. And like anything, talk to your CPA before, to ensure, as I said, make sure one of those accounts are not, potentially a non-IRA. So there's a lot of different scenarios that I would say, particularly when you're getting multiple folks involved. And a final point on the multi-member LLC is that if you don't, and sometimes it could be kosher to invest, say 2 or 3 parties without having a multi-member LLC, but particularly for something, say as a house, every dollar that comes in or out. So you buy, a bunch of screws and nails, each, say in this, 3 people contribute it, each of the 3 people would have to contribute equally. And every time a rent check came through, each of the 3 would have to be chopped up in 3. So it could be an administrative nightmare. And that's why you would have a multi-member LLC.
You got to have good family ties with a situation like that.
And a whole lot of accountants without ego. So I say that affectionately, as have a lot of my family's accountants here.
But yeah, no, I remember what I was trying to think of earlier. The rule of thumb was you can't benefit from your retirement account, and your retirement account can't benefit from you.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Boom. That was it.
That's I can put that on the bottom here. Love it.
Yeah. Okay. I know some out there promote QRPs versus SDRAs related to dealing with UBIT with leveraged real estate. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So all else equal, and we'll get into a little bit of the sizzle between the SDIRAs and the solo 401k. All else equal, the solo 401k, which is also known as the individual 401k, EQRP, is the superior account. And there's multiple reasons for that I'll enjoy getting into in a few minutes here. Now, that said, yes, there's no potential UBIT, there's no potential UDFI when you use the solo 401k. But one thing that I've, from a personal basis, and also I've been fortunate to probably have been on 100, whether in person or, over Zoom here, 100 plus calls over the past few years, is that you have to think of your retirement bucket maybe separately from your personal bucket from what you're investing in. So, if the sponsor, if the deal looks like it makes sense, and it crosses your thresholds, you probably want to go forward and invest. Personally, I've never not invested. So I have a legacy Roth IRA, self-directed Roth IRA. I have never not invested, meaning I have always invested, even if there was a small potential for UBIT or UDFI. So, our knowledge base, which is rocketdollar.com/learn, goes into deep detail on this. And like anything, it's something that you should talk to the deal sponsor, before going into.
All right. So this is a question. If you did work on the flip yourself, could you still use the SDIRA as you are using sweat equity to build the profit?
Okay, so if you're...
So say you bought
I hear you.
a house to rehab using your SDA, and you're like, all right, I'm going to buy all the material using the account. So I'm not using my own personal funds, but I'm going to be the one hammering the nails and painting the walls and laying the trim. And would that...
Yeah. So
yeah.
No, so you should not be touching your property. I would say the only appropriate thing is, once again, collecting that rent check, you on behalf of your IRA and putting the money into your IRA. You should not be getting your hands dirty, literally, in this example, nor should you be staying, taking a crash pad to stay there a few nights. This is a true passive, although you are the owner, this is a true hands-off property.
Right, because getting back to you can't benefit from it and your account can't benefit from you. Basically, in a sense, what's happening is you're reducing the expenses that your account would have to pay because of your sweat equity. So say you're saving your $1,200 from not having a contractor doing it. Mm-hmm. That's now $100 or $1,200 that your account is benefiting because you put it in, because you put the work in. So that's kind of what they mean whenever they say your account can't benefit from anything you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So great information. Dan, you got a few more slides?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh shoot! I was just running through
please
all the
keep.
questions.
It's all good.
Keep the questions
keep,
coming, everybody. Yeah, we'll get to them all.
Yeah.
It's like I do have to say, like whenever I first found out about this mechanism, my mind was blown because you go through most of your life like, oh, I need to save up, and then you save up and you have a little bit for this, a little bit for that, and then you're thinking, how am I ever going to get into multifamily, which is another question we have coming up here soon. It's like it's kind of impossible, and then you're like, oh, hold it, wait, I've been working at this place for 6 years and I get this statement every year with how big of a number is. I can actually use that because you never think that you can. So I think it's just incredible.
Awesome. So let me just blast through a few of these. As I said, I know we have folks with a varying level of experience here, but big takeaway from checkbook control, just as it sounds, and I know a few of us like me have gray hair, we remember what a checkbook actually is. You have access to your money at all times to invest in what you want and when you want. That's why it's bold and underlined here, not a third-party custodian. This is pretty powerful. This saves so much time. I know a lot of folks also, a few of the fundraisers here raising money, say you have your best friend that gives you a check for $25K every quarter. It's absolutely ridiculous that you and your best buddy would be on the phone with some random third party for the sake of their paperwork. So checkbook control, I think, is definitely the way to go. By default, a solo 401k has checkbook control. At Rocket Dollar, I'm going to push forward here a moment, uses the IRA LLC model. This is something I think, so kind of waking up my experts on the call here, that you'll hear more of in the future here. What this means is simply is that there is a custodian in the background. Legally, there has to be for an IRA, but on day one, you are funding your LLC. Your custodian checks the box to say the LLC is a good asset. And then from thereafter, you can make it as many investments as you want. So especially for folks that want to maintain privacy in an IRA, in a self-directed IRA, this also gives you, that benefit. So, real quick, and I'll even cut this to 30 seconds, nomenclature 101, traditional, AKA pre-tax, which means a lot of us have had a job, we've had a 401k, it comes off your top line when you get your pay stub. That's same in SDIRA. This is just another stop on the train where your money's going. Now, on the back end, in your 60s and your 70s, when you take this money out, you will pay for it. But as we talked before, it grows and the tax is deferred pretty much forever. Flip side, on a Roth, think of the seed versus the tree analogy. I used to say, if you were to invest in Facebook, you'd much rather use a Roth account, pay on this, call it $100, not on the $1 million X years in the future. So these are sort of just some common nomenclature. We talked about some of the other, items earlier here. And I will be sharing these slides, guys, if you want it. So I know there's a lot on here. Here's, once again, the solo 401k. Somebody mentioned the EQRP before. What's really solid here is that, once again, full checkbook control, full access to your money to invest in what you want, when you want. And an added benefit is you can have a pre-tax portion and a post-tax portion. Some folks say all of my startups are going to go in the Roth because I think I'm the smartest startup guy investor and I'm going to invest in, the next Facebook, Uber, et cetera. Other folks say, I just don't want to pay taxes forever. I want to push them as far along as possible as I could. I want to be in a pre-tax traditional account. You have the benefit of both within a solo 401k. Another big advantage, and there's multiple in the solo 401k, two that I want to highlight. One is the contribution rate, and the other one's how you can loan to yourself. So the big thing is that anybody in the United States can do 6,000 or so in an IRA. You're looking at about 10x this in a solo 401k. And on top of that, if you're a husband-wife team, say without W-2 employees, you can be contributing up to over 100,000 a year. So, quick math on how this gets done. A lot of folks that are W-2 are going to be familiar with this 19.5 number. This is your salary deferral. You still have that benefit, say if you're a self-employed consultant. But on top of that, you can take 20% of your net earnings. So let's just say you make 200K as a consultant right off the bat, and by consultant, I mean truly self-employed. You're a one-man, a one-woman shop. You have the 19.5, 20% of your 200K, you're getting up to this max of 57,000. Once again, husband-wife team, add this by 2, very powerful. And then if you're above 50, you still have the benefit of the catch up here. So contributions are, fantastic. Let's say, people in a W-2 job, maybe you only did 10,000 at your day job, but in your side gig, you made money, you can still do the 9,500 to get to the 19,005. Super, super powerful from a contribution standpoint. I see the questions blasting in here, but let me just finish up on this one. The other one is you can loan to yourself. So the great thing here is you can do whatever you want with this money. It's up to 50,000 or half the value of your plan. So where is this? So let's play out a scenario here. Congratulations. I heard, one of the folks on the call on your January 12th, kind of your day, which makes me assume, hey, your TSP, you can actually do something with your TSP money now. Let's say you roll that into a solo 401k because you're acting as a one-man or one-woman consultant to the military. You roll in your 110,000. Let's use the bottom example here. You have an idea for something on the side. And this can be anything from a car, a vacation, a startup capital, or maybe it's like, hey, this is a down payment I'm going to put on a rental property or anything else. You can pull out this $50,000, do whatever you want with it. So as long as you pay it back in 5 years with a reasonable rate of interest that you're paying to yourself anyway. So super powerful to have access to your money. So as long as you pay it back over 5 years.
Do you get to pick the interest rate?
You do, and it has to be reasonable. I would say in this climate, single digits. I mean, you don't want to throw out a goose egg, but you don't want to throw out like 50%. I know some people are savvy and they just want to, put as much in their retirement as humanly possible, which is a fair strategy. But, people just say prime plus a few points. So I like to say in this environment, do 4 to 8%, you're fine. And, a lot of the shops that are used to this can give you some guidance also.
That's like a twofer in a way, right? Because you can take out the money, then you could charge yourself a higher percent that's reasonable, mm-hmm. and then you could stuff more cash into the retirement account because you're paying back the loan.
It's a beautiful thing.
Awesome. So cool.
Yeah, it's pretty slick, and right. There's a lot more benefits. Sorry, continue.
Oh, I was just, thinking if you're, that's a clever way to get more than your 19.5 a year into it.
Absolutely. So any other questions on these last two? And then I have just one more slide and can close up. But, while we're talking on the solo K, anything else in the chat?
We do, but go ahead and finish up and then we'll start the Q&A.
Okay. And just a final one, I joke this isn't something, on the right side of the screen that I was bored because it, snowed for the first time in 20 years here in Texas. But just to give you some range of, and I'm going to actually read on the screen right to left, why possibly you haven't heard of this, of an SDI rate. It's been around 50 years. There could be literally trillions of dollars in these accounts, but there's only, 100 billion or so. And the big reason is, I like to say, it hasn't been country club cool. It's not something you want to tell your friends about because, and this is no joke, this isn't, an intern test. This is the legacy folks in this space, their pricing. There's just a lot of fine print. Up until 5 years ago, you still needed a scanner and a fax machine to really get anything done. That's got a little bit better, but there's a lot of charges. There's charges for per transaction, per asset. It's just not comfortable. Whereas on the right, I think a lot of checkbook control providers are going to do a simple, transparent, flat fee. So I said, just for reference, here's Rocket Dollars. As a thank you for everybody on the call here, showing, being that I'm from Pennsylvania and spent some time in the city of brotherly love. Here's your hundo, for the month of February. If you feel compelled to sign up. But, we just felt we want to keep this as simple and easy as possible because we want so many folks to sign up and not feel the friction that, frankly, has been around in the space for, the last 50 years or so. So with that, I want to say a huge thank you, particularly for folks that took the time this evening to come on. Everybody knew that I'm meeting today. I love these discussions. LinkedIn is a great place. Please reference that we met here tonight. I have my link, my email, and then also at your convenience, rocketdollar.com/learn.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll just blast through some of these questions before we get to the Q&A, because a lot of people have a lot of intricate and complex thinking with their questions. I love it. This kind of thinking I love. It's very creative. All right. So first one, my 401k is locked in my current company and they don't allow to move money out anywhere. Options, please.
Sure. So when you're at your current company, and I love terms like locked in, you're gonna be my marketing guy here. So at your current company, you cannot touch it until you're 59 and a half is the general rule. Now, once again, if you leave this company, or let's say there's an acquisition, at times this may be not considered your current company's 401k, which is a blessing in disguise. It's as if you left the company even though you're still there. But high level, unfortunately, you're stuck, until you choose to leave the company. I would say on the flip side of that, this does, let's say you're on, your third corporate job in so many years. What I strongly suggest not doing is taking your IRAs, your 401ks from previous employers and just boom, once again, pun intended, rocketing them into your new employer, because it's going to appear that you've been at this employer for your whole career and you're not going to have access to your money once again until you leave that employer.
Oh, good points. All right. Sorry, I came late. So with the SD Roth IRA, I can use that to get started in multifamily. I think that's a big fat yes.
Booyah. Yes.
All right. Oh, I like this question. Okay. SD IRA money goes into a flip purchase. When the property is sold, the money that came from the IRA goes back in. One can't pocket the profit outside of the IRA, but can it be funneled into a 1031 within or outside of the SD IRA?
I'm going to say,
right. So you're not touching the profits.
Understood.
It's not coming to you, but you are able to, or would you be able to 1031 that into another property?
So I'll caveat say I'm not a CPA, lawyer, et cetera here, but I'm going to say no, because a few things. One is, as we talked about, Heath's great quote, you cannot help yourself as an individual. So you can't really pull it out. Secondly, by default, by the makeup of particularly a Roth or any IRA, you don't really need to find an instrument like a 1031 to defer taxes on, right? It's basically built in within the account. So short answer is no.
All right. If I have both Roth IRA and a traditional IRA, can those funds be mixed? I would think not.
No, that's a great question. So the beauty of the solo K world is, once again, pre-tax money, boom, here. You actually have a separate checking account number for your post-tax money. In the IRA land, you do need two unique accounts for your traditional and your Roth. Now, once again, as an LP investor, traditional IRA can say put in 50K and Roth IRA can put in 25K, because these are two unique entities. But no, you cannot commingle the funds and mix and match.
All right. To clarify, I can transfer my Roth IRA over to a solo 401k, or does it have to go into an SD IRA?
Yeah, great question. So a traditional, meaning pre-tax, can either go to a solo 401k or I'd say go down to an SD IRA. When you have a Roth IRA, unfortunately, that can only go into a self-directed Roth IRA. So what we've seen at Rocket Dollar is, well over 10% of our early customers did have that scenario where they said, listen, I'm doing something on the side now so I can open a solo 401k. I'm going to roll over, 100,000 into that. Separately, I have this legacy Roth IRA that has to go into a complete unique SD IRA.
Right. And then you can't 1031 a flip. I think if you were to own the property for a year and a day, you might be able to. I don't know what your holding costs would be on an endeavor like that. Yeah, and for most, I think 1031 on a flip is not allowed. And you have to own the property for a little bit. Another interesting thing that I heard once that you can't do is you can't buy a property and rent it out yourself at a ridiculously high rent in order to stuff more money into your retirement account. Is that correct?
Correct. And it's not as much the high rate, it's who you're renting to. Once again, your
Right.
IRA cannot rent to you.
Does the same, could you rent it to, you could rent it to brothers and sisters, but not your father and kids? Or parents and kids?
Yeah, I mean, officially, yes, but what you would have to be careful is, so a lot of us are familiar with an Airbnb concept. So let's just say you were charging, you have a pimped out place, you're charging $1,000 a night. When your brother and sister come, you would not, all else equal, say, oh, it's UT football weekend here in Austin, we're just going to charge them $20. That's going to be a no-no. You kind of have to treat folks the same. Yeah.
That's a bummer.
Tough one.
But I mean, like it is what it is. I just had another question, but anybody else got any questions? Go ahead. If you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask while I try to remember the one that I was about to ask. I guess for the most part, it seems the best way to keep yourself safe from all these rules about what you can and can't do or how you can contribute or help or benefit is to just put the money into a syndication because that's the most hands-off you can be. And as someone who is a landlord for 24 units here locally, it's a lot more peace of mind, I guess, and less phone calls in the middle of the night. So yeah, that's all I gotta say.
And historically, SDIRAs have been around since the 1970s, and it has gone to real estate, and a lot has been a passive investment. So it's probably the most vanilla and common thing. When folks ask me, "Oh, I learned about this. What should I do next?" It's usually as an LP investor.
Right. Okay. We asked you this on the podcast, but I'll ask you again for our audience now. What's the craziest thing anybody's used their SDIRA to invest in?
Well, some people have asked certain things, which, you cannot do because they frankly want to benefit from it. But I'd say one of the coolest things with one of our earliest, I have friends that are ex-pilots, not ex-pilots, pilots that are retiring from commercial companies. And when you turn 59, you're like the cool kid in high school again. So, because you're about to leave, you're going to have this pension, you're going to be able to touch your IRA. So they've literally seen the world and they say, okay, with my piggy bank checking account, I'm going to buy a condo here in the Caymans. But then on every block for the next 4 blocks, I'm going to use my IRA to buy 4 more. And, maybe I'm just going to, once again, they're not going to be hands-on, but they're just going to peer up every now and then, make sure they're getting paid and all of that good stuff. So I thought that was a pretty cool way to, spend $1 million and use your retirement.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Oh man.
Dreaming of the Caymans.
Yeah, that's right. They'll just buy up the whole cul-de-sac. Oh man. All right. Did everybody get all their questions in? Anybody else got questions? Nope. All right. Well, Hutch, you're the one with the breakout room controls. So,
all right. Okay. So Dan,
first, we want to thank Dan so much for joining us today and dropping all this knowledge. Like I said, it's incredible what you can start to do with your retirement money if you have access to it. And as I've always said, I remember getting my statements in the mail, and it's like, they try to fit as much paper into one small little envelope as possible. And you open it up and there's just all these numbers and pluses and minuses and matrix code and, just this one number at the bottom, and have no control over how any of that goes. But once you are able to get checkbook access, then you can start putting it towards things that you can go kick, not just numbers on a piece of paper that I get. So that's just my own personal feelings.
He also can find a deal at breakfast and fund it by lunch.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Love it.
Dan, great information. Really appreciate it, my brother.
Yeah, great
Really-
presentation, sir.
Yeah, especially
Awesome.
with
Thanks, Sean.
yeah, especially what y'all have going on over there in Texas. So really appreciate you taking time out to make this happen for the folks who are willing to listen. All right,
Awesome.
so
Such a pleasure.
yes, sir. Will you be sticking around for the breakout sessions?
Yeah, I'll stick around and I'll throw my information in the chat also.
Sounds great. And if you already put your email into the chat, I will ensure that you get the recordings and also the presentation with Dan send it over to us. All right, sounds good. All right, so if there are no more questions, we'll go into the breakout room. Actually, before we do that, do you mind turning your camera on so we can take a Zoomy? I think it's called, Heath. Zoomy.
Yeah, Zoomy.
Oh, there you go, Anti-Gay. Yeah. Always smiling, man. It's great. Hey,
Right.
Good seeing you, Michael.
You got the best smile ever.
Eric, I see you growing that beard in, man. I'm not sure the Navy gonna be good with that.
He's like, I'm out, I'm done.
Man,
Michael, what's
freedom.
up, man? Good to see you.
Yeah, Solomon, you with us, brother? Aaron, Sean, let's get a Zoomy real quick, and then we can roll into the breakout session, if y'all don't mind. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, only got one page. Good. All right. So we're gonna go into the breakout rooms, and I'm gonna time it for about 10 minutes. We got a small group, so we'll do about 4 rooms with 3 people, or yeah, 4 rooms with 4 people. 4 and 4. Yes, sir. All right, let's do that. Let's see, 4 room. Boom. All right, when it comes up, just click on join the room, and you should be off.